it wasn't until I was 32 years old and bought a beautiful house in the hill country, that I felt like I could walk into anybody else's home and feel like I belonged there because I was semi-equal. Even though I put myself through college and I, helped grow this Austin marketing and branding agency, and everything said on the outside that I was everything I needed to be. And who says you need to be anything, really, to be able to walk into somebody's house invited and feel confident and comfortable? I felt always like, well, they're going to see me. They're going to see that I'm not what they think I am, what they want me to be. And so that's still something it was when I bought that house that I felt like, oh, I did all the things. I checked off all the boxes, for them to see me as what I want to be seen as. I finally did all those things. But then I got divorced and I lost all the physical things that I thought I needed in order to show that. So then I had to internalize and say, okay, so the physical things are gone. I can get them back if I want to. Do I want to? I have that choice. But in the emotional turmoil, what's really important is that when I show up for me, when I'm by myself and in my, 2 o'clock in the morning in my own thoughts, am I really not smart? Am I really not pretty? Am I really not and do those things matter? Because when I hear people describe me, it's fun and engaging and loving and giving.
Hello and welcome to the Generate Your Value podcast. I'm your co-host, Andy McDowell, founder and owner of Generate Your Value, providing self-leadership, leadership, and business coaching services for corporate executives and business owners.
And I'm Zach Levy, your other co-host. I run a nationwide financial service business with my wife, Megan.
Together, Zach and I have the intention to bring you tips, concepts, ideas, suggestions, stories, and analogies from A to Z, which will help you to grow your personal brand and leadership skills in such a way that joy, happiness, and success, as you define it for yourself, are achieved.
We hope to use our gifts, talents, and experiences in business and leadership to generate value in your life. And with that being said, let's move to our topic for today.
Hello and welcome to the Generate Your Value podcast. My name is Andy McDowell, your host extraordinaire. I don't know why I just said that. I just said it to say it. Sounds good, right? Extraordinaire.
Your fabulousness.
Oh, your fabulousness. There you go. So I got a great guest for you today. A common topic on this podcast where we talk about leadership, self-leadership, and talk about our stories and how it is that we get to where we are today. My guest today is Steph Silver. She comes to us all the way from Austin, Texas. Been to Austin, a great university there, capital of the state of Texas. My favorite part of it is the bats that come out from underneath the bridge at sunset. It's, to me, a very unique aspect of the city that most cities don't have.
Mm-hmm. It's very
so
cool.
if you're in Austin, you might want to check that out. So let me read Steph's bio, and then we'll bring her in and get to know her a little bit better. Steph Silver is on a mission to enhance as many lives as possible through cultivating meaningful and memorable experiences in work and life. Having lived in over 30 places before the age of 17, including campgrounds and homeless shelters, then building a life of abundance and love, Steph knows the power of seeing light in dark times, finding opportunity in failure, and seeking connection as a key to success. With over 20 years of experience building and growing brands, Steph is brand, business, and life advisor, a best-selling author, and an authentic and powerful speaker. So, Steph, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Andy. I'm honored.
So I'm sure most people are listening to your bio are going to clue in, or their ears really perked up in the same place that it perked up for me when I first met you, and we had a discussion about you coming on the podcast, and that's the section that talks about 30 places before the age of 17. That's not very common. If you could, let's spend 5 or 10 minutes, let you have an opportunity, pick a spot on your timeline, and talk about your life journey to date. I'm a big believer in the power of storytelling. So here's an opportunity to kind of tell your story.
Absolutely, me too. So if you want to hear the full story or know the full story, you can read my memoir or listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's Anywhere USA by Steph Silver, of course, read by Steph Silver on Audible. But so I wrote and shared the memoir because from that moment of 17, when I moved out and looked back, I went, wow, that was a really interesting experience that has to be written down someday. So it was actually from that time that I started thinking about it, and then my life and journey, as you know, everybody's life and journey is really unique and incredible, but I didn't know the full value of it until this last year, and I think God and the universe and all the spirits combined and said, Steph, you must do this. You must write and share this story because there's so many lessons that you need to learn again and that you need to share
Mm-hmm.
with everyone who has experienced any of these unique things in life. So I, at the age of 2, was kidnapped by my birth father, taken from Oklahoma to Oregon, and that was my first big move. um, and from there, the story doesn't get less interesting.
Yeah.
So from that point, my mom did find me, and with my stepfather and my mom and my brother and sister, we lived all over the Western United States, back and forth between California, Nevada, Arizona, Colorado, Oklahoma, Texas, Alabama. We were all over the place, and for the most part, my brother and sister and I found joy in the experience and adventure of it. We absolutely loved living in campgrounds during the summer times. Um, what we didn't love was the tumultuous, verbally abusive, alcoholic environment that we were in,
Mm-hmm.
which, you know, people will say like, well, yeah, you know, when I grew up, we got kicked out of, you know, this place or that. And so we went from this apartment to that house, and what, you know, it within one town. The thing is, my dad chose. He didn't get kicked out. He didn't get fired. He just said, hey, I think we should go to Salt Lake City tomorrow. And we may or may not make it to Salt Lake City. You might
Mm-hmm.
find something more exciting along the way. And then you know, we went through that whole first first phase and story of my life. And then I decided that I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I wanted to not be my parents. So
Mm-hmm.
in high school, I stopped drinking and smoking pot my senior year, and I decided I'm definitely going to go to college, even though no one expected me of that or expected that of me. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know anyone who went to college, so I honestly thought it was for astronauts and brain surgeons. I thought there was no way I'm going to do this, but I'm going to try anyway. I sobbed crying. I was so afraid that someone would immediately see me walk on campus and go, "Who do you think you are? You don't belong here." Um, but I knew that I thought that I didn't have any other choice. If I didn't want to be like my parents
Mm-hmm.
and struggle from one thing to the next, that I needed to go to college. So I put myself through college, and I declared marketing as my major for no other reason than I thought business is the path, right? And but I got a scholarship in theater and loved that so much that that became my major, and I never took one class in marketing or business.
Hmm.
Yeah. Then I had the amazing and beautiful opportunity to study with the Royal Shakespeare Academy my summer, or the summer between senior year and graduating. And so I had some fabulous experiences in theater. But again, I said I don't want to be a starving artist, and that's in my mind. Like if you're an actress, or if you're, in that world, you have to starve for a little while before you make your way, if you ever make your way.
Hmm.
So I was a waitress and did events at a high end restaurant in Austin. And I went to my boss and I said, I'm so sorry, but I had been working there for 4 years. I said, I'm so sorry, but I have to quit and find a real job. And he said, well, I know you've had the opportunity to talk to this consultant that we hired. He recommend that we hire you as director of sales and marketing. Does that sound like a real job?
Oh.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yes, yes, it does. As a matter of fact. So I went to the half price bookstore and bought every marketing book I could find. Joined the Chamber of Commerce, went to every conference and seminar, and just dove into marketing and branding. And I learned, and this is the beginning of my absolute love and passion for brand experience, because I was working at this restaurant. I have this background in theater, and one of the things that I loved about theater was experiential theater. The directors who really understand that when you can, it's not just the set and the script. It's every little bit of the experience. If you walk in and the play is set in Alaska, then that auditorium should be really cold, just to get
Hmm.
you into it, like the smells and all the different things. And so I started bringing that into to my marketing role, and have been doing that ever since. So from there, I went into sales for a payroll company, and then I eventually worked my way into a marketing and branding agency, and worked my way up at that agency from sales to vice president, and then worked there for 12 years. Grew it with my amazing boss. We worked as partners. He was absolutely incredible, and opened the business up to me, and shared that growth with me, taught me everything he knew. And then I started Vine Collective 2018. But then, just as I decided I was going to start my own business, I found out my mom was sick with cancer. She died 1 month later. My dad died 8 months after that. Then there was a pandemic, and then I got divorced. So here we are today. And that is why the universe and the spirits and God said, you need to read all, or relearn all of
Hmm.
these lessons of strength that you have. You need to know that you have more power than what you're feeling right now. So get out from under that rock and proceed.
Yeah, so that's a good segue to my next question. So I didn't move 17 times in my life. I did move 6 or 7 just in elementary school, because my dad kept getting promoted, and he was in sales, and every time he got promoted, it was a new territory somewhere in the U.S. And then he turned down even further promotions when I was in junior and senior high, because he knew he'd moved his kids so much already that I need some stability for my kids. So I'm going to bypass promotions for now until they get into college, and then we'll look at doing it again. So I know what it feels like to move around a lot, having to make friends all the time. It's kind of like being in the military without being in the military.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and my journey's been a journey of self esteem. I had really bad self esteem, high school, college, early 20s, which was not fun. Not fun to have bad self esteem and always being a people pleaser, right? Because you're not really looking out for number one, which is yourself when you're doing it. Um, but I've learned, I'm 60 years old now, adult life, and I look back at that time in my lens, and the way I look at it is very different than the way I was looking at it when I was in the midst of it. So, how has that been for you now that you're out in the adult world and have experienced adult life for a while? How is it that, what's different for you looking back on your childhood experience compared to what you were feeling or looking at the time that you were in the middle of it?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Some of the things were, I was more able to go with the flow and see life as an adventure as a
Mm-hmm.
kid, but I definitely had self-esteem issues beginning at, kind of the same age everybody else starts to become self-aware. But because I had the necessity, ability, requirement to become someone new every 6 to 9 months. um, I felt like I had to shift to be the person that would fit in quickly, or I wouldn't have any friends at all.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, I had a very verbally abusive alcoholic father who um, could turn on a dime from loving to angry. So the self that the pleasing mentality was hammered in even further there. So it's interesting. Yesterday, I'm doing this kind of stoic challenge this beginning of the year. It's still January right now
Mm-hmm.
in 2024. And the challenge yesterday was to write down 10 things you've overcome. And I'm like, oh, this should be easy. But the thing is, because of all the stuff that I've overcome, but at the same time, it's hard for me because it's been my life, it's hard to see all the things that I didn't even write down. Pandemic, 9/11, I didn't write down the flood that I went through when I was in kindergarten and lost everything, because there's just so many things. But the first thing I wrote down was overcoming a verbally abusive father. And then I had to think about that and say, have I really overcome that? What's the definition of overcoming? And I thought, okay, I've forgiven him. I've moved on in my life. From an outside perspective, sometimes from an inside perspective, successful. But what is it? What are the scars that are left over that are still
Mm-hmm.
affecting me? And it wasn't just the verbally abusive, it was all the moving and pleasing and all those things. And so I am thinking of, okay, I still don't think I'm pretty enough, I still don't think I'm smart enough, I still think I'm a selfish bitch because he told me that every day. I still think all these things to some extent. I'm still afraid to talk to some men or to say how I really feel, because I don't know how they're going to respond. I still read a room when I walk in to see who's safe and who's not, all of those things. So that's how it affected me, and I'm still dealing with it. It wasn't until I was 32 years old and bought a beautiful house in the hill country, that I felt like I could walk into anybody else's home and feel like I belonged there, because I was semi equal. Even though I put myself through college and
Mm-hmm.
I, helped grow this Austin marketing and branding agency, and everything said on the outside that I was everything I needed to be. And who says you need to be anything, really, to be able to walk into somebody's house invited and feel confident and comfortable. I felt always like, well, they're going to see me. They're going to see that I'm not what they think I am, what they want me to be. And so that's still something it was when I bought that house that I felt like, oh, I did all the things. I checked off all the boxes um, for them to see me as what I want to be seen as. I finally did all those things.
Mm-hmm.
But then I got divorced and I lost all the physical things that I thought I needed in order to show that. So then I had to internalize and say, okay, so the physical things are gone. I can get them back if I want to. Do I want to? I have that choice. But in the emotional turmoil, what's really important is that when I show up for me, when I'm by myself and in my, 2 o'clock in the morning in my own thoughts, am I really not smart? Am I really not pretty? Am I really not and do those things matter? Because when I hear people describe me, it's fun and engaging and loving and giving. So, do I need that big house? Do I need all those things? Do I need to actually be prettier? You
Mm-hmm.
think those things that you think give you confidence, those aren't the reasons that people love me. Those aren't the reasons that my friends stick around. They're not the reasons that I still talk to and absolutely love and adore, and vice versa. The people that I lived with in California when I was in elementary school. And so your last question, you know, what do you see as generating value, or where do you the way you phrase it, showing up as yourself and knowing what that is,
Mm-hmm.
and feeling that, like people, especially if you have been through a natural disaster, you can lose anything. We own nothing. You can lose all your people. Who are you
Yeah,
left?
and do you own those things in an effort to feel like you fit into the world, right?
Yeah.
You're actually doing it for others as opposed to yourself. I mean, we all need some kind of housing from a safety protective standpoint, from the weather and the elements and so forth. I don't think anybody would question somebody buying a house from a safety dwelling perspective.
Yeah. And from an
But the
economic
question,
standpoint,
right,
long term.
right, but the question is, do I want a $100,000 house, or do I want a $2 million house? And what are the reasons behind that? If you want the $2 million house because you feel like you're going to be somebody in this world, that's different than just saying, no, I just want $100,000 house. It gives me what I need from a safety perspective, and a feeling, an emotion of a place I can call my own.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
the why is the
the why
question
behind
there.
it.
Yeah, like I live just outside of Austin in Wimberley, Texas, and it's very, very expensive here. So it doesn't
Mhm.
take much to get up to $1 million. So if somebody but if you really love art and you love modern architecture and it
Mhm.
makes you happy every single day to get up and get your cup of espresso made perfectly from your espresso machine and look out on the view of the hill country, and then
Mhm.
jump in your heated and cooled pool and do laps, and then like it 100% makes sense to have that $2 million house,
Mhm.
because you are enjoying it. You are filling yourself with the love and joy and experience that you want to experience,
Right.
as opposed to wanting to bring everyone in and have them see and validate. that you made a good choice.
Right. So what was there one event in your childhood or in your life journey where you felt like a switch was kind of flipped? For myself in the self-esteem journey, it was divorce from marriage number one. Uh, Having had parents that were married for 61 years
Mm.
and having that as a model, and so forth. I was walking away from that experience with thoughts of failure and how could this happen to me when I have parents that showed me the model and the way, uh, on top of the already self esteem problems that I had. And being introspective and saying, this is not what I thought was going to happen. This is not what I want for myself. And what do I need to do from a self leadership perspective to change things? Which led me down the journey of therapy and self help books and anything I could get my hands on to figure out what was going on between the 2 years, uh, and what I needed to do to create that life that I wanted for myself. Did you have a similar event? I mean, you've had a lot of events
Yeah.
in your life, but is there one distinct moment that you can say it was at this point, me sitting here emotionally and saying, I got to do something different?
Many times. Um, One of the themes of my book, um, first of all, I didn't even realize a lot of my readers expressed that the biggest theme of my book is unconditional love. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
even see that. So I'm glad that as a theme, I know it and feel it. But one of the themes that was very, very clear, I just wrote it as it was. So I didn't create the themes and then write around them.
Right.
Um, but one of the themes is that there is no such thing as a bottom. There is no such thing as a top. They are our own personal limits. And we can and do hit them many, many times throughout our lives. My dad chose to be homeless many times.
Mm-hmm.
Even when he owned his own business, we had a 4-bedroom, 2-story house and a house, a boat, and 2 cars, and we're great. And he's like, I'm going to leave that all behind, including all the furniture. Just take what we can get and go live in a campground for a couple of weeks, and then we'll get a 2-bedroom apartment in Carson City. I was not a fan of that move, but
Gee, I
so
wonder
we're
why.
and we lost our dog and our cat and our bird too, like everything. But so was that a bottom or was that just a change? We get to choose the perspective of
Mm-hmm.
that, and and then the top, that's a perspective too. Like I thought before my divorce, before I like we were at a top where I thought life was perfect, and then somehow a switch was flipped for me. I didn't do the flipping. And it wasn't my ex-husband's fault either. It was just something about something that happened in life that both of us and all of us and even our friends, and I think it's a stage of life where kids are a certain age and yada yada yada, like all of a sudden you're put to the test. And I think sometimes I think we failed it.
Mm-hmm.
But there is no such thing as real failure either. Um, So I've been on a journey of self help and self exploration since I can remember. I mean, I ran around the house or danced or whatever because I loved the physical exercise and I loved to dance. But also, I'm like, Mom, this is so healthy for me. Can we eat more vegetables, please? It was the beginning of my self health and exploration, and I've been doing that for years. But we were not, my dad was an atheist. We were not a religious household growing up. My mom went from being a Christian to mostly an atheist, just never talked about God. Lived her life for fun and adventure. And so I didn't know anything about religion except going to church every once in a while with my grandma when we were in Oklahoma. But when my mom died, like I said, she went from being diagnosed with cancer to being gone in about a month.
Mm-hmm.
And um, it was a very, I'd always been interested in religion and religions and spirituality and believing ghosts, but I believed in energy and science, not God or spirit like an angel standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
I really wanted to believe in spirits, like I want to talk to them and have, like all the woo-woo fun stuff, but not from a God standpoint. So when my mom died, I had all these signs and communication, and it was about my mom's death. It was about my mom. It was about me. It was not it was there was all these things that were happening from a spiritual religious standpoint, and then my life just seemed to start completely crumbling around me. So I went to an energy healer, and one of the first sessions I said, I just feel like I need to do something very different with my life. Like, I don't know, it feels like I need to get divorced, but I have this picture perfect life. Like this life that I never imagined that I could accomplish. And I thought if I did, I would be like 80, like right before death. I finally would accomplish this thing. And here I am, I guess at the time, like 38, and I've done it. And like, I don't know what's beyond this, but if anybody were to like is Norman Rockwell, right? Did like draw this picture perfect life of like two boys in the Texas hill country, 2 acre, this beautiful picture. This was my life. How could I want something different? And I don't even, and she said, well, just paint another picture. And that was the beginning of a light bulb for me. And other people are like, how much did you pay this lady to just tell you that? But it was exactly what I needed, because there is no such thing as a perfect picture.
Mm-hmm.
It's different
Well,
for
and
everybody.
going back to the early part of our conversation and the why behind it, whose picture is it really?
Yeah.
Is it what
Yeah.
you think? Is it what you think other people would paint a picture for your life versus the picture that you paint for yourself?
Yeah. And did I paint that picture when I was 12 and I moved 5 times in my 8th grade year?
Mm-hmm.
And I just needed, what I always said was, all I want in life is a house with flowers in the yard, pictures on the wall, and matching dishes.
And
That,
life is in seasons. Maybe it was a season in your life that brought you some healing.
yeah.
Your life needed to have that kind of picture for healing to occur. Once the healing happened, then the picture needed to be something different.
Well, and I believe that my healing hadn't actually happened. I
Mm.
had I had lived a life of success through brute force. If I run fast enough and I work hard enough, then everything will fall into place. And I think most
Yeah,
Americans,
lots
yeah,
of doing, as I call it. Lots of
lots
doing,
of doing, no being.
no
I
being.
Yeah, I did not take care of myself. I did not know who I was. And when I literally, like, I am considering writing my next. I have two ideas for a next book. One of them is overcoming curses. The other is what I learned from going through a midlife crisis.
Mm.
First of all, don't do it. No. Um, avoid it at all costs. So I did. Like, I got divorced, and I fell into, like, the divorce was part of the midlife crisis, and he was experiencing his own at the same time, and neither one of us could support each other emotionally. But I did all the wrong things. I mean, I knew, I read books about like going through this change eh, consciously, you know, and they're usually triggered by a big change, like a death of a parent or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. And I had all of it, right? So I'm like, you know what? I did not go through this consciously, even though I wanted to. I wanted to be spiritual. I wanted to be attached. I wanted to be present. But instead, I drank a lot and I smoked cigarettes. That's not what I would recommend to anybody. But sometimes life just happens.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got myself in a really, really terrible place. And luckily, I have enough people around me that love me. And I had the foundation of already being in the habit of personal growth. And I don't allow myself to stay down. And I have two children that I have to be present for and teach and be a guide for and an example for.
Mm-hmm.
And so that my switch flipped. I slow down because I want to say flip switched. My switch flipped when I realized that I didn't want to go any further down, that I had hit bottom,
Mm-hmm.
and that if I wanted to be a good mother and live any semblance of life that I was happy with and proud of, I had to make every change that I could, no matter how small and how slow. And so that's what my biggest lesson has been in the last couple of years, is that my run hard, run fast, work hard, run hard, scale the mountain, all of that is just not possible all the time. And sometimes, I said for a long time, like it felt like I was just in molasses or, like drowning, and I had these like really terrible analogies of where I was. And then somebody describing their own situation said, I feel like I'm stuck in honey. I'm like, oh my God, that sounds so nice. That sounds so much better than like being consumed by quicksand. So I'm like, okay,
Or
so what if
or
it's,
or or being in the middle of a garbage pile. Can't
yeah,
move.
exactly. Well, and I gave, I was thinking about this analogy this morning that I feel like the last 3.5 years, I have been in a tornado, a hurricane, an earthquake, all of it at once. And maybe it's been, yeah, about 4 years. And it's really just been in the last 9 months or so that, because they said, well, this friend that I was talking to, how do you know that you are on the other side of your crisis, your midlife crisis or whatever? And I said, because I can see, because I can feel the earth beneath my feet, because everything around me is settled and permanent, and I believe in the same reality as everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that like the same reality as everyone else. It's not that I was like losing my mind, maybe I was a little bit, but um it there I think when you're in a place of crisis, or what, a lot of people call a rock bottom, the sense of reality is not solid. And so it's hard to find anything to grab onto.
Mm-hmm.
But what I learned and what I taught myself is that you only have to grab onto one little thing at a time. You don't have to find that big log to like get you out right now and we're safe and we're back on top
No,
again.
I often use an oak tree as the visual, if you will, for finding mission, purpose, or your why in life, right? So
Mhm.
with an oak tree or any kind of tree, you have tens or hundreds or thousands of roots that are underneath it, and all those roots don't grow at the same rate or at the exact same time, right? So it's about starting a system of roots, and as you go on with your life, you're growing more and more and more to have that stability, that grounding, that presence
Mhm.
that you need to have. and that you can hold on to when the storms are coming, right? That's a big thing that that oak tree is there for, is that, have that sense of grounding. And yeah, it's a little chaotic around me at the moment, but the chaos is not inside. I'm grounded.
Yeah.
I have a mission and purpose. I have a peace within myself. I have those deep roots, and I just need to hang on because it's temporary and let
Yeah.
it pass by.
What I found was that so I knew when right before my mom died, I realized someone said the quote, happiness is a balance between roots and wings.
Hmm.
And I thought
Hmm.
that's absolutely true. And you can,
Yep.
like, go back and forth and fly and come back. But what I realized was that in my childhood, I had zero roots. I
Yeah.
say zero. Like I knew my grandma and I had, some semblance of my mom's family, but um, I really didn't have roots. And then when I moved out, I worked so hard to get roots that I didn't have wings.
Hmm.
So then I started to work on my wings. And then with the divorce, I realized that I thought I lost my roots because that was my roots.
Hmm.
And so I think that feeling that rootedness and having, knowing who you can rely on in your business life, in your friendship life, and in your family life. What are your roots? Who are your roots? And knowing who they are before something happens is key to weathering those storms. And you have to have them in all of those areas to some extent.
Hmm.
Like you said, they grow at different times, but if
But
you're
it starts
superficial.
with you first. It's about growing the roots for yourself,
Oh, absolutely,
and then
but
and
at the
then
same
having
time,
the support mechanism right around you between family, friends, acquaintances, and whatnot, that
yeah.
supports, that helps support it and feed it, right?
But when you lose your sense of self and and your awareness of your personal roots aren't there and
Hmm.
you go back to questioning everything. And I say this from from a person who experienced trauma and, all sorts of things for so many years. There's hundreds of thousands of people across the country and millions of people across the world who find their way through life without they have palm tree roots. You know what I mean? Like palm tree roots are very feathery and they go wide, but they're not very deep, and that's why they don't
Well, they have to,
weather.
because of the sandiness and so forth. They have to do that to get water, right?
Exactly.
The water's up at the very top of the surface, and that's it. Versus
Yeah.
other trees grow in different parts of the world because water is fairly deep, and those roots can go deep to find the water.
Yeah. So it's really very important to work on those roots and that
Hmm.
that inner purpose and that inner why all the time, even when you think, especially when you think everything is going right. Why is it going right? Why does it feel right now? What is it about this time in life, about, again, family, work, friendship, spiritual connection? What is it about all those things that makes this feel right?
Hmm.
So that when it's not right, I know what to strive for, what to go back to. Or is there something else beyond that? Because what was right at one time doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be right in the
Hmm.
future either.
Yeah, as you grow and evolve, the definition of that or the need for it may change.
Yeah. So I realized after I went down my path of destruction that I had my goal of not being like my parents,
Hmm.
and I was dedicated to that. And then when I lost them both at about the same time, I realized I realized later that I wanted to hold on to them somehow. And that's when what was them they were wild and unpredictable, and they drank all the time, and they smoked cigarettes, and they got high, and they,
Mm-hmm.
like, so I'm gonna own my person that I was before I strived to not be them. But that wasn't me. That
Mm-hmm.
was them.
That was
So
them.
but that's a root I thought I had to hold on to. But it's a root that almost killed me.
Mm-hmm.
So like being aware and knowing how to come back, or knowing when to ask for help. So here's two things that really transformed. There's so many different things because I'm so dedicated to um, self-discovery and growth. Um, but there's this concept called radical honesty. And I'm a generally, literally open book. I wrote the book on myself. Tell my life story over and over again. I don't have many secrets. So it's not about not keeping secrets. It's about speaking up and being honest with yourself. If you have
Mm-hmm.
a thought, like we talked about earlier, a self-doubt, like, oh my gosh, there's no way I can get on that stage. Everybody's going to say X. Well, is that really true? Or do they
Mm-hmm.
generally want you to succeed? They want you to be entertaining. They want to learn something from you. They want to cheer you on. Why would they not want that for you? And it's not really about you. It's about them. They want to get something out of your speech,
Mm-hmm.
or if that's it. But so going the radical honesty, like, is that true? If it is true, what can I do about it?
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, if it's not true, shut it down. That's internal speaking. External, something's bothering you. Gosh, you got to say it because you're committed to this radical honesty thing. And I realized in my marriage that I hadn't done that. We have these assumptions. Well, I think that he probably thinks this, or I think that the reason he reacted was because of that, or whatever it might be. And then we go through and we add 20, 30 years to that. And now you're on totally different pages, and you assume that this person inside and out when you've been
Mm-hmm.
making assumptions for 20 or 30 years
Yeah,
based on
and
what you.
overthinking things. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
right there with you because I was a big worry wart
Mm-hmm.
back when I was really struggling with my self esteem issues. But that worrying was from overthinking and trying to guess what what people were thinking and what was going on outside of myself. And it wasn't until I started questioning that and asking, well, does that really serve you? Does that serve your higher good? To be
Mm-hmm.
overthinking this stuff and assuming what people are thinking about you. And I was able to get myself to a point of saying, uh, I'm not going to worry about it until it actually shows up.
Mm-hmm.
Not in my imagination, but it actually becomes reality and there's evidence of it. Then I'll start worrying about it.
Yeah.
But
It's
until that
like back.
happens, there's no need to worry about it.
Yeah. What can you control? you
Mm-hmm.
know Act on that. um and yes, so my word of this year is, and I'm living with radical honesty, acting with ease,
Mm-hmm.
and thinking and behaving and being with ease. So even when, like, this happened to me the other morning, my son wanted to do these 5 different things before we went to school, and he's very adamant about getting there at 7 o'clock, even though school doesn't start until 8. And he was playing basketball in the house, and I'm a boy mom. I'm pretty free flowing. So I'm like, that's fine, but use this smaller basketball and pay close attention to how you're using it so
Mm-hmm.
that not everything in the house is completely broken. And so he started with throwing the big basketball. And I'm like, no, 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 no. We're not going to do that. Please, let's do the smaller basketball for these reasons, right? You remember the reasons? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So then I go back to getting ready and I hear bam. And I'm like, what? And he's bam. And I'm like, what? Hey, what you doing with the basketball? And he said, well, I'm seeing how fast I can get it back. And I'm like, well, let's not do that either, because remember, the reason for the small ball is so that we can keep control of it. We don't break things. Like, so if you throw it as hard as possible, you're more likely to,
Damage
still break
something.
things. And
Yeah.
yeah. So, okay. So we're having like multiple conversations. I'm like, we're I don't want to tell you not to use the ball. Like, most parents are going to say, don't use the ball in the house for these reasons, but I'm trusting you to, make good decisions with the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then I walk by him, and I have like this archway, and he throws the ball over the archway, but it doesn't go over the archway. It hits exactly where my mug of matcha tea is that I had just filled up. And the mug explodes, and there's tea everywhere and glass everywhere. And I'm like, okay, this is why, you're supposed to be paying attention. Oh, mommy, I'm so sorry. I'm like, yeah, I know. Let's just chill out for a minute. Let me clean this up. And he's like, well, are you ready to go? Uh, no, no. We have this huge mess. We're not going to be late. We have a whole hour before you're
Mm-hmm.
actually late to school. Let me clean this up. And then he throws the ball again, and I'm like, is that a good choice? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you can tell that I'm frustrated. I'm cleaning up this big mess. I'm covered in, you know, what was hot and is now cold. Can we chill out for a minute, please? And then like multiple other things happened, and I was so frustrated for a minute. And then again, like, mom, are you ready? We're gonna be late. And I'm like, I have to change my clothes too, and so then I go to him and like, I'm sorry that the day started off this way. Let's talk about what we can do to change that. um and the reason I tell this story is 10 years ago, I would have been pissed off, and I would have yelled, and I would have
Mm-hmm.
taken away the ball, and I would have started the whole morning with just anger and frustration, beating myself up for allowing the basketball in the house, beating him up for making bad decisions, and then letting him go to school that way. And
Mm-hmm.
then being upset with myself for being angry with him when I dropped him off. And instead, I people may disagree with my choice to let him have the ball in the house, but the bigger thing for me was my choice to control my emotions, to show my frustration, but to say, I'm not going to get angry about this. I'm actually going to laugh at how silly this is, because it's my wanting to have fun, allow fun in the house that's causing this. And aren't I blessed to be able to have these types of frustrations, because I have two wild and crazy boys that are young enough and playful enough to want to play ball? So it's my choice in how to see and perceive that. So when I go to work, I can tell this story laughing, instead of saying, oh my God, I had the most frustrating day and my kid's a jerk. And, like, it's completely my choice. I get to choose to look back and laugh, to handle the situation with ease, and move forward. So one thing with that was, for the longest time, it was like, I have to be on time, I have to be early. And my kids were super young, and I lived about an hour and a half away from work. And they were so young that every time I got them dressed, they would undress themselves, kind of a thing.
Oh
And
my.
yeah, and they were like little lizards that just like somehow they always took their clothes off immediately as soon as I got them on, and I would get so mad. And then one time, I after I put their shoes on, they took their shoes back off. I took the shoe and I threw the shoe and I yelled, and I was like, God dang it, just, and I got in the car. I like, what did I just do? Why? Why did I get so angry? So that I can get to work and sit there by myself and wait for everyone else to show up? And I'm like, what the heck? Is that worth yelling at my children for? And then them going to school and me being frustrated all day? So I made a choice. This is another light switch, right? I made the choice I'm like, if we're late, we're late. I've been at this job for 12 years. If they get mad that I'm late because my kids keep stripping down to their underwear, fine. And I realized really quickly that I was still on time most of the time. And if I was late, it's 5 to 10 minutes. And I was never late for a meeting. It was just getting to work on
Hmm.
time.
Hmm.
And I thought, I realized I changed my entire life and my children's lives and their daily way of being by making that conscious shift. And it really didn't change my life for the worse at all. It didn't change anybody else's life for the worse at all.
Well, in essence, what you're doing is you're creating an emotionally safe place for your children to play and be happy, but you're also starting to teach them some tenets of self leadership in making decisions. With the good choices
Mm-hmm.
by kind of doing by being present and having some patience in the moment and start saying some things to the child that lets them be a little bit introspective and go, okay, was this a good choice for you? What kind of outcome
Mm-hmm.
were you hoping to have here? And do you feel like you got that outcome or not? And if you didn't, why do you think you didn't get that outcome? How could you have done things differently to get the outcome that you want? And
Yes.
you can't do that with the child if you don't create that emotionally safe place. Instead of being controlling
Mm-hmm.
and really angry and just stifling everything, but to approach it from the standpoint of let's kind of do a review here. I'm going to give you, the child, the power by giving you the choice, and kind of reviewing what the outcome was and how can we look back on this and how could you have done things differently to maybe get a better outcome.
And at the same time, I tell these stories about my life and about my kids because it all bleeds into leadership and
Mm-hmm.
work. Um, we lead by being and by doing and by showing that I recognize this, automatic behavior and I'm able to shift it. So there's the self leadership of being willing to be introspective and
Mm-hmm.
change and being able to do that. And one of the things that I didn't like about my parents growing up, or other bosses that I had along the way, was the unwillingness or inability to have a conversation to get from one place to another.
Mm-hmm.
It was an unspoken expectation or a rule, and you were either punished or locked out emotionally. And a lot of leaders do those things
Yeah. they
automatically, or they micromanage, like you got to do
yeah,
all
so
these
it's
things.
all fear based, and from that fear they want to control things to make sure certain outcomes happen.
Right. So leaders need to always be taking the time to self-evaluate in in the same way that hopefully they are evaluating their team.
Mm-hmm.
You don't wait for the quarterly evaluation or the annual evaluation that either hopefully you get from your team, and that you give to your team. You're constantly evaluating internally to see, how can I be a better leader?
Mm-hmm.
How can I lead my life better so that I can show up in all aspects in the way that I want to show up?
Mm-hmm.
And know that you're not going to do that at all times. There are going to be seasons of your life when it's all going to fall apart. Hopefully, it's a really quick season. um, or hopefully you can look at it and go like, ha, I'm in the middle of the storm right now. I
Mm-hmm.
can tell. And look at it like, what a, one of the blessings, the ability to see beauty is a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
The ability to look for beauty is an incredible gift. And the more you train yourself to look for beauty and to experience joy, the more you will see it and experience it. So if you are in the middle of the deepest crap storm you've ever experienced, and you can look around and laugh or say, oh, this is crappy, but look at that beautiful flower over there. Isn't that nice? You can turn it around.
Mm-hmm.
And you can, that's when, oh my gosh, I have this idea. Now I know how to get out of the crap storm, because you allow yourself to see outside of it, to feel outside of it. And that is the beginning of getting out of and past the trauma. It has to be an internal, energetic shift.
Yeah. What out of the trauma? What are you going to own? What are you not going to own? And that piece that you do own, how are you going to use self leadership to heal from it and move forward to go after the life that you want for yourself?
And be honest about what the life you want for yourself. So,
Oh,
from
you have to
coaching,
be just like you said. You have to be brutally honest.
yes, brutally honest and completely open. One of the things that I have my coaching clients do is to think about what their all-time ideal perfect life would be, like one day in the ideal of a perfect, like what do you wake up doing? What do you drink? What does it smell like? What does it feel like?
Mm,
And take out any like allow for all the possibilities, every single possibility in the entire universe. Like
mm-hmm.
I wake up in Spain, like whatever it is. I wake up every day on the beach, but I don't actually like to be sandy, so I have a pool. Or you know what I mean? What is it that is your all time? And then cultivate the experience in your body of what would it feel like? What does it feel like to be in that life every day?
Mm-hmm.
And what's one little thing that I can do to move toward that, or to feel that feeling? And so maybe you are limited by what you currently know. I've never been to
Well,
Spain, so I don't know what it's really like to live there. So I can't imagine what my daily life would be,
mm-hmm.
but I know what I want to feel like when I wake up and when I go to bed.
In my coaching, I use business language and business constructs a lot, right? So if we're going to set a strategy for where we want to go and what we want this company to look like, going back to what you just said about life, then we have to be brutally honest in our strategic conversations about
Oh yeah.
who we are and as a company, and maybe even as a leadership team, and where our strengths and weaknesses and what we need to do to go after what kind of company we want to be. It's the exact same thing in life, right? We have to be brutally honest with ourselves,
Uh-huh.
even if it looks kind of ugly, and do what we need to do to change things little by little to get to the point where we have the life that we picture or want for ourselves.
Yeah. And being able to accept brutal honesty is a big part
Yeah,
of that.
yeah. Can't be afraid of it. You have to
You
be able
can't be
to. You have to be
emotionally
able to.
attached to
Yeah,
it.
yeah. You have to be able to sit with it and say it
You're like,
is.
oh,
It
I
is what
thought I
it
owned
is.
that thing. You think I totally messed it up?
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about why, instead
Mm-hmm.
of like, no, I didn't.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
let's get rid of the ego. Ego's the enemy.
Hmm.
And instead of
The
pushing
ego
up
is there
against
for
it and pushing
survival.
it away.
Yeah.
Uh,
Ego is necessary, but it can definitely be a bully.
mm-hmm. Well, I could sit here and talk forever about this with you, but unfortunately, our time is coming to a close. Great conversation. I mean, I wanted to get into some of your business side, but it was just so juicy on uh, elements of self leadership and so forth. I just said, "Well,
Mhm.
we're just going to cover this today."
Yeah, so that is what I love to talk about. spirituality and personal experience, mine and
Mm-hmm.
everyone else's, and life growth. And that's why I realized that my purpose in business is to help humans thrive
Mm-hmm.
in whatever way I can do that. So my experience is in branding and in marketing. That's what I've been doing for the last 20 years. And I have expanded my skill set through education and experience to the coaching and masterminds and the cultivating offsite experiences and retreats for my clients, in addition to the brand building and brand advising, because I realize fully that a brand starts with the leadership and the feeling that the leadership cultivates throughout the business.
Yep.
So, and I'll just close with that. Just like anybody who made it through this conversation was just interested in the conversation, but that's why I talk about all those other things,
Mm-hmm.
because it is that your brand is your people. Your leadership makes a big difference, and your hiring makes a big difference. Don't
Mm-hmm.
hire for skill, hire for, I mean, obviously that is important, but culture and personality fit, um,
Mindset.
energetic fit, mindset, growth mindset,
Mm-hmm.
all of that will be your brand. It
Mm-hmm.
will determine where you go, how far you go, and how long you'll be able to do it.
Yep. Totally agree.
There you go. There's the bow.
So, if somebody wanted to reach out to you and have further discussions about possibly partnering with you or what we discussed today or anything of that nature, what's the best way they can connect with you?
So I just want to mention again, my memoir, Anywhere USA, is available on Amazon and Audible and Barnes and Noble. My email, if you want to reach out to me directly, is ssilver@vine-collective.com. Instagram, I'm at Vine Brands. Those are the best ways to get in touch with me right now. And I love these types of conversations. I really find my gift and passion is in helping people and companies overcome their challenge and rise to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what my trauma and experience of life has gifted me to be able to gift to others.
Yeah. So we'll end with the same question we end all of our interviews with our guests on, and you kind of stated at the beginning of our conversation. Just forewarns you in the green room before we start recording, but Steph Silver, what does the words "generate your value" mean to you?
Generate your value, honestly, to me means living your best self and sharing that with the world in the way you know how in the moment.
And by doing so, then creativity gets to exist, and you get to find ways to generate value in the world, right?
Yeah, so we are all here with our own gift.
Mm-hmm.
And if you live it authentically and you're not trying to be somebody else all the time, you live it authentically, you are generating the value you are meant to generate.
Yep, absolutely. And couldn't said it better, because those are the reasons why I picked that as my business name. Is for that
Mm-hmm.
reason, that we were created to generate value in this world. But we got to find our mission, our purpose, our why, understand our skill sets, our talents, whether they're innate in ourselves or we actually grow them,
Mm-hmm. And
to
that
bring
word
that to bear in the
value,
world, right?
yes, I agree completely. And I love that you use the word value, because it's a holistic word that
Mm-hmm.
means your personal worth and everything that you can bring emotionally, spiritually, energetically. And then that translates to your financial value and wisdom that you share.
Yeah, as I've said in many podcast interviews that I've given, uh, I could sit here in an hour just to talk about the different shapes, sizes, and colors that value comes in. So there's no kind of one set formula, so to speak. It is a holistic term, and you just got to figure out where your tribe is that's going to value the things that you can create through your creativity, and go do it.
Yes, and don't undervalue the little bitty tiny things. One of my
Oh,
favorite quotes was from a client, and I asked them what, I was thinking this big, grand question: how are you going to impact the world as a
mm-hmm.
business?
Yeah.
And she said, well, we all make an impact simply by living in it, living in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So your value may be that you were kind to someone who needed it.
Yep. On that specific day, at that specific moment,
Mm-hmm.
you created a ripple effect in the universe, and you don't even know it. But something just as simple as holding the door open for them, or giving them a compliment, or whatever it may be. Well, Steph, I can't thank you enough for coming on to the podcast and sharing your experiences, your life story, and your lessons learned, and so forth. On the podcast, we call them golden nuggets for the listening audience. I hope you got some golden nuggets from our conversation that you might be able to take away from our time together, to integrate into your own life and start going after the life that uh, you're worthy of, that you were born for, and can make an impact in the world with. That's why we're here. Share these
Mm-hmm.
kinds of stories and experiences and so forth to inspire you to go after that for yourself. And in so doing so, then it affects your leadership of others, in hopes that your leadership will actually then go inspire others under your care, if you're head of a team or CEO of a business or whatever, to go do that for themselves. Because that's why we're here. That's why humanity exists. So we're here every week with another great episode, another great guest, just like Steph. I hope you'll subscribe, come back and see us, share it. If you really like the episode, you like the golden nuggets that you got out of it, and you know others that might get something out of it, please share it. Because that's the way that the value gets delivered. We're creating content, but if the content just sits there and doesn't get shared and people don't become aware of it, that's why we have branding and marketing, to make sure people understand that we exist as a business or as a person, or the content exists. Then the value doesn't truly get delivered, does it? So, have a great day. Have a great week. Keep generating your value in this world, and we'll see you here next time on the Generate Your Value podcast. Take care. Thank you so much for joining us today on this episode of the Generate Your Value podcast. If you find our conversations to be useful in your life, I invite you to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss an episode.
You can find me online at Instagram at _Zach.Levy, Facebook, and LinkedIn.
For information on my coaching services, visit my website at www.generateyourvalue.com. You can also find me and my company on LinkedIn, Facebook, X, and Instagram. Simply search for Generate Your Value on those platforms.
Once again, thanks for joining us for today's podcast, and we invite you to generate your value in this world.